Hello. Today, we are here to talk about standardized testing. Standardized tests have been used to measure a student's performance and to gauge a student's understanding of a subject. As stated in the article, History of Standardized Testing in the United States by the National Education Association, standardized tests have been used since the mid-1800s, though it became more widely used in the early 2000s. More specifically, we will be talking about the negative effects that standardized tests have on students and their ability to learn. There are many different ways in which a child can learn. A child may learn best by watching a demonstration, doing it themselves, by listening to the instructions carefully, or reading about how to complete the task. It is safe to say that not all children learn the same way, just like it is safe to say that not all children do well on tests. A child may know the information on the test and might have done well on assignments regarding that information, but due to stress or test anxiety, they may have not done well on the test. So it is a fact that we can say that not all children perform the same on tests. What is the history of standardized testing? Different schools and universities began to use tests to check students' understanding of information that they were being taught. As stated in the article, History of Standardized Testing in the United States by the National Education Association, quote, "No Child Left Behind education reform is expansion of state-mandated standardized testing as means of assessing school performance. Now, most students are tested each year of grade school as well." Unquote. This happened in the early 2000s. There is a long history of standardized testing in the United States, spanning over 150 years. Though some good has come out of standardized testing, some negative outcomes have also come out. Ask yourself, how can standardized tests be harmful to a child? Think about it carefully. We know that every child doesn't learn the same, just like every child is not good at every subject. A child might be really good at English, but not so good at math. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Now, imagine you're a 5th grade student who's not great at math and feel bad when you get bad test scores. Then, at the end of the year, you're handed a standardized test on math. How would you feel? Would you start to get nervous or doubt yourself? That child received a low score on that test. What do you think it would do to their self-confidence? Would it likely cause the child to feel bad about themselves and their abilities in math? There are many negative effects that standardized testing can have on a child, not just lowering their self-confidence. As stated in the article, The Effects of Standardized Tests on Teachers and Students by Tim Zimmer. Quote, a Council of Great City Schools study states that the average student takes approximately 112 standardized tests by the time they graduate high school, with standardized testing 2.3% of the classroom time for an average 8th grade student. Critics of standardized tests argue that the test place unneeded stress on students to perform well, especially when tests are delivered in excess. Unquote. With a student having to take multiple standardized tests every year until they graduate, usually all tests being in the same week of school. If the school doesn't have block periods, keep in mind. Imagine the amount of stress a child must deal with when having to take up to 5 tests in a single week of school about all the information they had learned throughout the school year. Students will spend up to a week or more preparing to take these standardized tests in and out of the classroom. Not only are these tests given in excess, but they are also putting immense stress on the students who may have other issues going on at home as well. The stress that these tests cause students can have different effects, anything from mental breakdowns to physical ailments. As stated in the article, Standardized Testing, Failures, Effects, and Future Improvements by Ben Harkaway. Quote, students are spending excessive amounts of time preparing for these exams, creating unnecessary stress and negative attitudes towards schooling. Such stress has been shown to cause students to have incidents of vomiting, headaches, sleep problems, depression, issues of attendance, acting out, and anxiety attacks. Unquote. In schools today, there's an increased awareness of mental health and the effects that poor mental health can have on students. There are currently programs in place in many schools to help children have good mental health. With standardized testing causing poor mental health, and even students having physical ailments, we must ask ourselves, are these tests doing more harm to students than they are doing good? While talking about students' mental health, we must also talk about students' self-esteem and what effects that standardized testing has on a student's self-esteem. A student's self-esteem can shift many times throughout a short period of time based on many different factors, such as if a child is being bullied by other students. It is important to help students have good self-esteem of oneself. As stated in the article, The Effects of Standardized Tests on Teachers and Students by Tim Zimmer. Quote, students begin to question their abilities and self-esteem when they see others as controlling the administration and consequences of the test they are mandated to take. Unquote. How can a student have good self-esteem if they are given their worth based on a score they receive on a test? School professionals will do everything in their power to protect children, as well as create a safe place for them to come and feel comfortable. How do standardized tests affect the safe place between students and teachers? Getting a bad score on a test that is supposed to define their abilities in a subject can cause a child to be embarrassed or ashamed of themselves. The child may no longer wish to go out or to school out of embarrassment or talk to their teacher. This can break down relationships that teachers have worked so hard to build up with students who may not feel comfortable already. It takes time for students to trust teachers, and vice versa. By mandating students to take standardized tests, it not only puts students in a tough position, but also their parents. As stated in the article, The Effects of Standardized Tests on Teachers and Students by Tim Zimmer. Quote, some families and students choose to opt out or simply not take these required standardized tests, but that can result in grade penalties and may be strongly discouraged by administration. Unquote. A parent is put in a tough position where their child is either forced to take a test that may cause them immense stress that may lead to physical ailments such as throwing up, headaches, or mental breakdowns, causing deep depression and anxiety. Or they can opt their child out of this test and risk grade penalties that will bring their grade down lower. Either way, each decision will affect the student. Parent is put in an impossible decision to affect their child's grade or to let them suffer from stress. One of the biggest of the negative effects of standardized tests is that schools and states will use the test scores to determine a child's intelligence or understanding of a subject. In a way, these tests are define if a student is smart and paying attention in class, or if a teacher taught the students to the best of their abilities. They don't think that maybe there's a flaw in the way that these tests are given. As I said earlier, not all students learn the same, and not all students perform well on tests. These tests can be used to determine if a child should move on to the next grade or if they should repeat the same grade because they got such a low test score. As stated in the article, Standardized Testing, Failures, Effects, and Future Improvements by Ben Harkaway. Quote, thus, students' intelligence is evaluated based on their ability to correctly bubble in to fill in a bubble on a scantron, unquote. Imagine being graded based on your ability to correctly fill in a bubble. The work that the student actually does on the test is not graded, but the bubbles on the scantron are. The truth of the matter is that the people who are grading these tests are not looking at the context surrounding the student when they are taking the test. If they are having issues at home, didn't get enough sleep the night before, or they are hungry because they hadn't eaten, there are so many different factors that can lead to a normally good grade student getting a negative grade on one of these tests. Not all children do well on tests, especially when given access and the amount of work put into each test. Some standardized tests, including the New York State Common Core test, are up to 60 multiple choice questions, with several short answer questions and usually an essay or two that students have to complete in a period of about 2 to 3 hours on average. Think back, these tests are given in excess and are usually given the same time of the year, where a student must complete up to 5 of these tests in a week. Think about the stress that student must be going through. How do schools determine if something is harmful to their students? We know schools have already made changes to certain areas, such as making sure that school lunches are healthier, creating a drug-free zone, and advocating good mental health. The real question becomes, are standardized tests doing more harm than good for students? There are many negative effects that standardized tests can have, anywhere from causing students stress to causing them to have physical ailments. What is the right answer? Should standardized tests be part of schools? Some examples of standardized questions from an 8th grade standardized test include: a barrel contains 60 gallons of water. Water leaked out of the barrel at a rate of 5 gallons every 3 days. At this rate, how many days will it take for all 60 gallons of water to leak out of the barrel? Multiple choice: 20 days, 12 days, 100 days, or 36 days. Question 2. Which number is equivalent to 3 to the 4th power over 3 to the 2nd power? Multiple choice: 2, 9, 81, or 729. Determine the product. 800.5 times 2 times 10 to the 6th power. Multiple choice. 1.7 times 10 to the 7th power. 1.601 times 10 to the 7th power. 1.7 times not 10 to the 9th power. And 1.601 times 10 to the 9th power. Imagine being an 8th grade student and having to answer 60 questions that are similar to those. The stress would be overwhelming.